On the national channel, we're reviewing all the happenings in the transfer portal.
Yeah.
And it's pretty clear, and I had heard this talked about in a few different circles, that this transfer cycle, especially this one, it being in the spring, the same thing occurred last year to an extent, but even more so this year, there were reasons to believe, because of uh, where scholarship numbers stand for most programs that need to cut.
Yep.
Most programs, most of the conversations I have with guys like you on the various shows that we have and others when we do records with everyone, is that the scholarship numbers for most teams are over the limit and they're trying to cut back. Therefore, it's reflected in the transfer portal that I would say, out of the 50 or 60, 70 players that I've gone through on these two shows, that it's pretty clear that about 5, 6, 7 of them, where the player obviously is a good enough player that he made that decision to leave.
Yes.
The other 80 some percent seem to be guys that are probably getting the nudge out the door. And that's where we stand in this transfer portal cycle, because again, 5, 6, 7 of these guys have been pretty premier players, all conference kind of players, where, okay, the latest being this TCU defensive tackle. He was a freshman All-American 2 years ago. Dominic Williams last year, all Big 12. He's making a decision. He's not getting pushed out the door. The two players for Nebraska, I remember seeing Chris Collier, and I can't recall who else has hit the transfer portal.
Yeah, and Chris Collier was a guy who transferred in from Florida and then left them, committed to Nebraska, played in 5 games, just defense, special teams, but no tackles, no really anything. So yes, and no shot at him, inconsequential player in terms of production. Yeah. And so I just, sometimes with these players, they're not a good fit, so Collier may have just been not a good fit for the team. He's very talented, though. Was a 4-star kid out of high school, but yeah, I think he was the higher rated of the losses, but neither one were really big deal. And this is expected to happen just because, like you said, we're over on numbers, and some of these guys are going to start, even though they're giving everybody a chance, I think some of these guys are going to start seeing, they're not blind out there. They're seeing what's going on. They're seeing the talent, and they're seeing the system. And, that's another thing. Got to remember, Corey Collier, maybe this isn't a good system. Maybe the 3-5 isn't a good system for him. So, so family issues. Yeah. So, there's a myriad of things that can go into this, but that is one of the things that's going to happen. We're going to see. And as long as it's these guys who really haven't produced and aren't expected to produce necessarily, those are the guys that I don't want to say need to go, but to clear room on the depth chart, those are the guys that have to go. And as long as it's not any talent, we're okay. We're doing the right things. But wish them both the best, wherever they end up. So
talking Huskers with all of you. We do this typically on Tuesday night. Lock it in, 7 Eastern, 6 Central. Be here next Tuesday. Bring a friend or 2 or 50 with you, and we'll talk Huskers as we prepare at this time next week on Tuesday for the spring game at Memorial Stadium.
Yep.
Before we move on to some other topics, anything else you wanted to hit on with the spring sessions?
Well, one thing first, before I carry on, I forgot to touch on this at the end, the beginning of the show, but Greg Sharp, I don't know if y'all are, prayers or religious people out there. Greg Sharp of the Voice of Nebraska, kind of alluded to on his show about his diagnosis, his show Sports Nightly, of course, about his diagnosis of cancer. I don't think he went into the specifics about it, but it's on the Huskers radio network, and he kind of went over that, and that was moving around Twitter a little bit. So, he's in our thoughts and prayers. And if y'all pray out there, just go ahead and give him, a little bit of a thought there. So, and wish him
I'm glad you brought that up, because otherwise I would not have seen that, except for I belong to 4 or 5 Nebraska Facebook groups, and I was posting just a notice about this week's show, and saw that on one of the Nebraska Facebook groups. And Greg was kind enough to join us probably about a year ago to record a segment here, and he seems like a remarkable guy. He's obviously a huge talent in the field, and was very giving of his time, and we had a great conversation with him. So
Yeah,
we certainly hope for all the best. And again, as Justin has said, depending on your belief system, send up a prayer, a thought for Greg
absolutely.
throughout the next few weeks.
For sure.
Absolutely.
Yep. And nobody has a really bad thing to say about him out there. He's been doing what he's been doing a long time, very good at it, and he does things the right way. So but yeah, outside of that, there was a couple of recruiting, just little recruiting nuggets. Chase Lofton, we've talked about him in the past, the tight end, 4-star. He's cutting down his list of contenders, and he has Nebraska, I believe, in his top 4 for that. Of course, he's out of Millard South in Nebraska. So Nebraska, one of those guys that Nebraska really, really wants to hammer down and land. So a top 24/7 offensive lineman, the pronunciation, Alai Kalanivalu. Okay. Listen, with the Hawaiian names, I don't like to pronounce names wrong or disrespect people. So, but 6 official visits on his itinerary. Nebraska is one of those as well. So, a couple of things there. And Nebraska's battling for a top 100 linebacker, Dawson Merritt. So, yeah, a lot of news coming out in the recruiting front. So, yeah, interesting to see how all of that plays out, because it is the point where we're going to start seeing some of the 2025 class, early people make some of these decisions. So hopefully Chase Lofton is one of those guys that we can hammer down early in the process. So